Let's continue that growth theme. Bring into play commodity guru, the chief market economist and strategist at NG Farah, Pete McGuire. Pete, gong hei fa choi to you. I mean, first off, we're talking growth. We just had that BP story. Let's talk China. Chinese New Year. How does that skew a suite of commodities, not least of all crude, not least of all copper?
Well, good morning, Brooke. Good morning, Carson. When you think of what copper's done over the last, say, 3 to 4 months, it's sitting just on $8,300 a metric tonne. I think the market will probably take a breather over the next, say, 2 to 2.5 weeks. Due to the Chinese Lunar New Year, it's fairly strong numbers at the moment. We've had good numbers coming out as far as services industry, and that's running at about 46%, pardon me, of GDP, versus what it was running internally at around about 17% to Chinese GDP in 1990. So certainly the internal economy is far more robust now versus what it was 20 years ago, and I think underlying demand is still strong.
How important is that services part of the economy as a barometer of the overall health?
Well, it's 46% of the GDP, Brooke, so it's very vast and it nearly matches manufacturing. So you think of, as far as the powerhouse of the internal engine, it's really, you know, 4 of the 8 cylinders.
Okay. Let's understand then one key market for China, which is Europe, and the implications of what's going on in the wheat markets now. Russia, Kazakhstan, a battle to supply end consumers. Who wins out?
I think Russia may do, remembering what's happened. They had Mother Nature play a very evil hand to them in the last couple of years as far as the drought, of course, and 30% of their crops, production numbers were down. But this time round, they're looking okay. Things are on the up. Kazakhstan is, of course, versus the US and versus the euro as far as exporting. So I think it's going to be quite strong for that whole region, and that will certainly be a lot better than where we're looking as far as the US with their corn production numbers.
What have the prices been doing lately?
Holding about these levels, you're still looking at $7 to $8 the bushel for wheat and corn. Soybeans are still running in that $14 to $15 range. But we haven't seen massive breakouts.
Stuck in ranges.
Yeah, I think
we're seeing a lot of this, aren't we?
Yeah, but remembering a couple of years ago, Brooke, we used to talk and it was $2 and $3 a bushel for corn. Think what it is today. What's interesting is that the ethanol producers are saying, well, they're backing off because of high costs. They can't make it worthwhile. So we're seeing a little bit of a downturn there as far as ethanol production numbers coming out of the US. So, you know, it all interplays as far as crop production versus the end user.
Okay, into Japan we go, because key developments even overnight. Maybe the governor leaves earlier than expected. Yeah. That seems to be welcomed by markets.
I think so. I mean, who would have been surprised to see, you know, it's 75 against the yen for the US dollar, going back probably the best part of 6 months ago. We were very concerned. We thought, well, Japan's really having some issues here. Now it's at 93. Now the Aussie dollar's nearly at parity. It's a 97.5. I think you'll probably see that by end of month. So that's very strong for for the Japanese in the sense where they've got it's far better for their economy, and not only is it better, but I think it's going to improve as far as tourist numbers and generally what Japan needs. They need an uptick.
What about geopolitical concerns? China and Japan look like they're on the brink, according to some experts. A standoff over missiles being pointed towards Japan.
Yeah, look, it's very hard to debate that one in the sense both have a very long history as far as what is theirs and their interpretation of what is theirs. And you've only got to put your mind back 100 years ago to, you know, the riots in Shanghai and so on with the Japanese and what they took over. Well, they took over a great proportion of that whole city and that whole area. So they've been invaded before. I'm not saying that's going to happen again, but it's going to be a very interesting how it plays out from a geopolitical.
Well, is that something you're pricing into copper as far as the sideways
what exactly?
move?
That's exactly what I was going to ask. What will it affect if we actually see that?
I think it's probably, it's damn hard to put an actual pricing in the sense where you could see some movement as crude oil and gold. Copper could just be taken up with the tide, but I think copper will stay at these sort of levels, $82 to say $8,500 a metric tonne. I wouldn't be surprised to see gold go higher from here. And all of these, if it runs into a little bit more escalation, then I'm sure that will really have some impact. Could be a very interesting year for geopolitics.
We haven't even talked to Iran.
No, we haven't. No,
and Obama's going to Israel now. White House confirmed that today.
And John Kerry's the new Secretary of State.
Exactly.
I mean, so how do you pair through all of that, come out the other end?
I think it's, it's a changing of the guard. And there's no doubt that Netanyahu was very concerned as far as Syria and Iran. So I I think you're going to see some form of strike by mid-year, and it's going to be very interesting how it plays out. Israel aren't going to back down in no fashion or form, and in some ways it's still a fractured league when you think about the Arab Spring. Sure. No one can say that Egypt's been put to bed and it's nice and everyone's rosy and there's no problems in Cairo. That's far from the case.
Yeah. Stand by for a widening of that band between Brent and NYMEX light sweet, potentially.
Yeah, running at about $20 a barrel.
Okay. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Carson.
Thank you, Pete.
Coming up, Chief Market Strategist, NG Farah, I think he was about to say, coming up, December retail sales numbers coming out, live analysis as they drop, so that's just ahead. Stick with us.